reading service. We are a United Way partner agency. We're located here on the campus of Fayetteville State University, and our center is being carried by the UNC Chapel Hill system. Today is Saturday, November the 11th. It's Veterans Day 2017. And your radio readers this morning are Stuart and Jacob, and we're glad to be with you today. And we're going to be reading from today's edition of the Fayetteville Observer. So let's jump right on in, and we'll start out with today's weather as we always do. If you've not been outside this morning, it is chilly out there, chilly and a little breezy. The high today is only going to be 51 degrees, and it's probably in the upper 30s right now, so it's pretty cool out there. Tomorrow's going to be cloudy, maybe just a little bit warmer, high of about 57. Monday will be partly sunny and a high around 60, and that's kind of the average temperature for the next few days into the first of next week. The lows overnight is going to be in the upper 30s, so we're definitely getting some cooler fall weather here for these next days. Okay, let's turn now to the need-to-know items, and then we'll do Today in History. The 3 need-to-know items this morning. Number 1, the Cape Fear Botanical Garden will honor the veteran community with free admission for veterans and active duty service members today. That's at Cape Fear Botanical Garden. Activities will be from noon to 5 and will include music, food, trucks, crafts, games, and more. The garden's cash bar will be open for craft beer and wine purchases. Item number 2. South End Missionary Baptist Church on Whitfield Street will have a military appreciation service. Today is Saturday, November the 11th, the 305th, 2017. Hard to believe it. Thanksgiving is a week from this coming Thursday. There are 50 days left in the year. This is Veterans Day in the U.S., Remembrance Day in the Rangers and Seneca Indians in central New York. The U.S. Army turned over its base at Long Binh in the South to the South Vietnamese and decimating Al-Qaeda's leadership. Is 92. Country singer Narvel Phelps is 79. Rock musician Vince Martell is 72. Golfer Fuzzy Zeller is 66. Singer Marshall Crenshaw is 64. Actor Stanley Tucci is 46. Actor Adam Beach is 45. Actor Jonathan Priest, Krista B. Allen is 26. And actor Ty Sheridan is 21. It's all yours, Jacob.
And now time for the live wire. Writing to the 43rd president is through his life at Southern Methodist University in Dallas. Nancy McCleary, what does the organization is absolutely forbidden to directly or indirectly participate in any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for elective public office. Violation of this prohibition could lead to the IRS to completely revoke an organization's tax-exempt status or impose excess taxes on the organization. The rules of hosting candidate appearances vary depending on the organization's reason for inviting the candidate to speak. According to After School Alliance, if a 501c3 nonprofit organization sponsors an appearance by a candidate or public official engaged in a political campaign, the agency must make sure it indicates no support or opposition to them at the event. Also, they must make sure all other candidates in the race are given equal opportunity to appear. If the speaker is invited in a capacity other than as a candidate, Boulder Advocacy says the organization does not need to invite any opposing candidates to speak. Neither should they feel obligated to offer similar experiences to all the other candidates, but the organization should make sure the event doesn't turn into a campaign appearance or fundraiser for the candidate. Mitchell Futch, Livewire seeks to answer questions of general interest in consumer topics. Initials are used to identify questionnaires when names are given. Contact Livewire at livewire@fayettevilleobserver.com or at 486-3516.
Okay, let's look at a few in brief articles this morning. In Charlotte, authorities say an air traffic controller has been arrested on charges of possessing a weapon of mass destruction. Local media outlets report that the FBI says 30-year-old Paul George Dondon was arrested Friday in Charlotte. The FBI is assisting Charlotte-Mecklenburg police with the investigation and said federal charges aren't expected against Dondon at this point. One person died Friday night in a traffic accident at the intersection of NC 87 South and Sand Hill Road. The accident happened about 8:46 p.m. according to Trooper R.D. Thomas with the North Carolina Highway Patrol. A man in a Honda sedan was driving north in the southbound lane of NC 87 and collided with a sport utility vehicle driven by a woman, according to Thomas. The man died. The woman was taken to Cape Fear Valley Medical Center. Neither driver has been identified. The Grays Creek Fire Department was among emergency units that responded. Traffic was rerouted through the parking lot of a nearby shopping plaza. In September, a two-vehicle crash at the same intersection injured 3 people, 1 seriously. A fire at the Ponderosa Fish and Oriental Market was quickly extinguished by the Fayetteville Fire Department on Thursday night. The restaurant had closed for the evening and crews had to force open the front door. A cooking container was found burning on a stove. There were no injuries. A damage estimate was not given on a news release from Battalion Chief Michael Autry. The fire was reported just after 10 p.m. at 501 Bonanza Drive at the corner of Santa Fe Drive in the Ponderosa community of West Fayetteville. An investigation by the Fire Department and the Cumberland County Department of Public Health is ongoing.
Public safety. Cumberland County arrest Willie James Sheffey, of age 58, of the 1600 block of Hinkle Street in Spring Lake, was charged Friday with 3 counts of financial card fraud and 1 account for financial card theft. Bail was set at $2,000. Zachary Edgar Cox, of age 22, of Charlotte, was charged Thursday with possessing cocaine, misdemeanor possession of marijuana, and 3 counts of misdemeanor child abuse. Bail was set at $3,500. Jawan Mikkel Wortham, of age 27, of the 800 block of Griffin Street, was charged Thursday with breaking and entering, larceny, possessing stolen property, and obtaining property by false pretense. Bail was set at $40,500. Robbery. Weatherstone Drive. Matika Brianna Cherry reported at 9:54 p.m. Thursday that she was robbed while on the 100 block of Weatherstone Drive. The report did not list any property that was taken. Some support groups on Saturday. ALS Caregiver Telephone Support Group at 10:30 a.m. to noon. To join this support group, call 800-582-3014. The passcode is 0884-57128. Facilitator is Joseph Peters, and his number is 409-2754 or 877-257-7401, extension 701. His email is jpeters@catfishchapter.org. Sex Addicts Anonymous. To find meetings, times, and locations, call 800-477-8191. The Tia Hart Community Recovery Program is from 7 to 8 p.m., 138 N Main Street, Rayford. Drug and Alcohol Dependence, 848-1872. Overeaters Anonymous is from 8:45 to 9:45 a.m. The 3rd floor auditorium, Veterans Affairs Medical Center, Sioux 261-2751. The Alcoholics Anonymous is from 2 p.m., 6 p.m., and is at the Campground United Methodist Church Education Building on the 2nd floor. This is from 7 and 10 a.m., noon, 5:30, 8, and 11 p.m. 626 Sandalwood Drive at noon. Holy Trinity Episcopal Church at 7 p.m. and the location is 231 W Martin Luther King Street, Maxton, 6 p.m. Carolina Manor, 110 Pine Run Drive, Lumberton. 10 a.m. noon, 5:30 and 8 p.m. at 604 German Street, at 6:30 p.m. at Hermitage Retirement Center, 550 Bailey Road, Lumberton. At 8 p.m., 333 Harley Lane, 8 p.m. Burnt Swamp Methodist Association. At 4050 Prospect Road, Pembroke. At 8 p.m., Calvary Baptist Church. Hotlines are 678-8733 or 678-8002. The Al Anon is at 8 p.m. Quartermaster and Logistics, Fort Bragg 261-2751. The Narcotics Anonymous is to find weekly meetings, times, and location. You can call at 866-418-9500 or go to the crna.org. Fayetteville Area Parkinson's Support Group is at 10 a.m. at the Kiwanis Rec Center at 352 Denver Street, 518-0045. The Secret Place Single Mothers Outreach is from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. Destiny Now World Outreach Center is at 2569 Owen Drive. Free child care with RSVP for ages 2 to 12. 920-7090 is the phone number, and the email is cdavmd@hotmail.com or thesecretplaceonline.com. The Marine Corps League Sean Nisley Detachment of the Marine Corps League informal breakfast meeting at 8 a.m. JK's Family Restaurant at 125 Owen Drive, open to active veteran Marines and Navy FMF corpsmen at 323-4159 or 624-5615. The Mothers with Children Behind Bars, 4 p.m. at 707 Murchison Road, Ramona at 977-6282.
Okay, obviously today is Veterans Day, so there's a number of articles related to Veterans Day events and subjects, so we'll be sharing as many of those as we can this morning. This next article is in that line. Whether they were maneuvering through the thick jungles of Vietnam or keeping watchful eyes on the American forces on the ground, two local Vietnam veterans and their service said their service was always a point of pride. The Army veterans, Samuel Robertson and Willie Wright, paused to reflect on their time serving in Vietnam, a war that triggered demonstrations and riots in nationwide anti-war movements. Nearly 50 years later, veterans in the Fayetteville area are being recognized for their service as part of the Heroes Homecoming events organized by the Fayetteville Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. I'm proud to be a Vietnam veteran, Robertson said from his home in Hope Mills. I believe I gave my country my contribution, and I'm proud. There are several events in Fayetteville this weekend to not only mark Veterans Day, but to especially remember Vietnam veterans. At the Airborne and Special Operations Museum, a half-size replica of the Vietnam moving wall is on display through Sunday. The museum will also show On the Air, a tribute to Bob Hope and America's Heroes, at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. today. Robertson, who is 72, had just graduated from high school when he volunteered for the Army in December of 1965. Not long after he completed training, the infantryman was in the jungles of Vietnam. It was something you've never seen before, he said, remembering how he cut the vegetation with machetes. Our job was to secure the area and make sure the enemy didn't infiltrate. Robertson was constantly on the move during the year he spent in An Key, Vietnam. Knowing that his family back home was praying for him kept him motivated, he said. A lot of them wouldn't admit it, but I'll admit it. I was scared. Robertson served in the Army for 22 years and retired as a sergeant first class in 1986. He lost both of his legs due to blood clots in the early 2000s. He said he tries to spend each Veterans Day with family. For Wright, Vietnam would become a familiar deployment. Wright, who is 80, retired as a colonel with 30 years of service in 1989, deployed to Vietnam 3 times. He hadn't planned on staying in the military for that long, but understood its role in national security. I just hope civilians have an appreciation for the fact that the military provides a degree of security for this nation, Wright said from his home in Fayetteville. Somebody has to be there or a foreign country will take over. Wright was commissioned from the ROTC program at Virginia State University in 1959. He was an infantry officer in the first 15 years of his career. In his first deployment to Vietnam, Wright and his platoon were tasked with providing security for Marines. They spent 4 months patrolling around Saigon. In his second trip, about a year later, Wright was part of a military assistance Vietnam, a headquarters that assisted in training the Vietnamese unit. I think that's also known as the MACV program. He lived with them in the rice fields, completing missions every few days. Wright said the Vietnamese soldiers never let him leave because they feared he would trigger a booby trap or fall into a spiked pit. He remembered one particularly dangerous mission. The platoon had made it about halfway through a rice field when the enemy, hiding behind mounds of dirt, began firing. The Vietnamese radio operator next to Wright was hit, he said. They were able to evacuate the troop by medical helicopter and kept moving. In his final trip, Wright worked as the operations officer for the 101st Airborne Division. Instead of moving through the fields with ground forces, Wright worked from a central operations center to track the movements of American forces. It was a demanding job with long hours, but Wright said critical to the success of missions to ensure forces had the supplies they needed and weren't accidentally fired upon. For 7 months he worked 18-hour days tracking American forces. The way I see it, we were all in the same unit, he said. Some were on the ground with their weapons firing on the enemy. I was in the operations center. I felt like I needed to do everything I can to protect them and support them. Both men celebrate Veterans Day surrounded by friends and family. They said they hoped civilians recognize the service of veterans from all wars. Take care of veterans, Robertson said. This article comes out of Raleigh, entitled Marine Instructor Gets 10 Years in Recruits Abuse. A Marine Corps drill instructor was sentenced Friday to 10 years in prison for choking, punching, or otherwise tormenting recruits, especially 3 Muslims, one of whom ultimately killed himself by leaping down a stairwell. A military jury handed out the punishment to Gunnery Sergeant Joseph Felix a day after convicting him of abusing more than a dozen trainees at the Marine boot camp at Parris Island, South Carolina. Among other things, he taunted the Muslims as terrorists or ISIS and ordered 2 of them to climb into an industrial clothes dryer, spinning one of them around in the scorching machine until he renounced his faith, the jury said. Felix, a 34-year-old Iraq veteran, was also ordered to forfeit all pay, demoted to private, and given a dishonorable discharge. Felix was a central figure in what was found to be a group of abusive drill instructors at Parris Island. After the March 2016 suicide at the base, a hazing investigation led to charges against Felix, 5 other drill instructors, and the training battalion's commanding officer. 11 others faced lesser discipline. Abusive drill instructors have long been stock characters in books and movies like Full Metal Jacket, but that 1987 film was set during the Vietnam War, and the Felix trial shows that since then the Marines have drawn clearer lines between what instructors can and cannot do, said Michael Hansel, a former Navy attorney who attended the proceedings at Camp Lejeune. This generation now, there's things that I think that we're much more focused on. In particular, in this trial, it's calling people names based on their religion and targeting people based on their religion, said Hansel, now a private attorney specializing in military law. I don't think anyone would ever say that that was acceptable ever, but it probably was not prosecuted in the past the way it would be now. The charges against Felix included commanding recruits to choke each other, ordering them to drink chocolate milk, and then training them until they vomited, and punching recruits in the face or kicking them in the ground. He wasn't making Marines, he was breaking Marines, Prosecutor Lieutenant Colonel John Norman told the jury Wednesday. He called Felix a bully who heaped special abuse on 3 Muslim recruits because of their faith. One of them, Raheel Siddiqui, a 20-year-old Pakistani American from Taylor, Michigan, hurled himself to his death after what the jury decided was mistreatment by Felix that included slapping Siddiqui and calling him a terrorist. Siddiqui's family sued the Marine Corps last month for $100 million. The government did not charge Felix with any crime directly related to Siddiqui's death. The judge, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Libretto, did not allow testimony about whether Felix's actions were responsible for the recruit's suicide. Felix was also convicted of ordering Lance Corporal Amir Bourmesh into a dryer, which then was turned on as Felix demanded, "Are you still Muslim?" Bourmesh testified that he twice affirmed his faith, and Felix and another drill instructor twice sent him a bruising, scorching tumble inside the machine. After a third spin, Bourmesh said he feared for his life and renounced his religion. The drill instructors then let him out. Felix was found guilty as well of ordering Bourmesh to simulate chopping off the head of a fellow Marine while reciting "God is Great" in Arabic. The jury decided Felix also ordered Rakan Hawez, a native of Iraqi Kurdistan, to climb into the dryer. The machine was never turned on. Felix was convicted too of rousing nearly 24 recruits from their sleep, ordering them to lie on the floor and then walking on them along with 2 other drill instructors. In a closing statement Wednesday, defense attorney Navy Lieutenant Commander Daniel Bridges said the government unfairly fashioned contradictory witness accounts into a case against the brawny drill instructor who called all recruits terrorists. Wow.
After placing a wreath on Spring Lake, Mayor Chris Ray places his hand over his heart, and Lieutenant Colonel Sean Smith salutes as taps is played during the annual Veterans Day ceremony on Friday at Veterans Park in Spring Lake. Photos by Andrew Kraft, the Fayetteville Observer. Today is all about the call. Spring Lake ceremony honors veterans' service sacrifice by Amanda Delasinki, staff writer. Spring Lake, dozens of people gather to pause and reflect on the service and sacrifices of veterans during Spring Lake's annual Veterans Day ceremony on Friday. From the jungles of Vietnam to the rocky steeps of Afghanistan, from Pork Chop Hill to the Persian Gulf, from Bastogne to Baghdad, there were soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines that have borne American wars and continue to stand watch, said Eric Nielsen, quartermaster of Spring Lake Memorial Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 4542. The ceremony included 4 guest speakers, the laying of a wreath, and the playing of taps by a member of the 82nd Airborne Division Band and Chorus. Spring Lake, which borders Fort Bragg, prides itself on its devotion to veterans and their families year-round. Veterans Salute as the national anthem is performed Friday in Spring Lake. Call. Nielsen expressed gratitude for veterans and encouraged them to share their stories to educate future generations. He said, "It is because of their dedication and sacrifice that we celebrate Veterans Day to recognize and honor all those who have placed country above self and determined the safety and security of others is more important than their own," he said. Representative Richard Hudson, whose district includes Fort Bragg, briefly spoke about the significance of America's military. He said it is critical for communities to take care of veterans, just as Spring Lake does. He said, I look around, and I'm encouraged, I'm hopeful, and most of all, I'm thankful. The ceremony closed with remarks from Lieutenant Colonel Sean Smith, commander of the 264th Combat Sustainment Support Battalion at Fort Bragg. Smith lauded the men and women who chose to serve in the military. Unlike civilians, he said, military members are forced to miss special moments as they have chosen a path to be part of the nation's defense. Today is all about the call, he said. It's about the observance, the obedience to that call to say yes when others would say no. The men and women who responded to that call for sake and self go beyond just self. Staff writer Amanda Dolinsky can be reached at ADOLASSINSKI at FayettevilleObserver.com or at 486-3528.
Well, we're at the bottom of our first half hour. This is the Southeastern North Carolina Radio Reading Service. We are a United Way partner agency broadcasting here from the campus of Fayetteville State University, the UNC Chapel Hill System Signal. We are a nonprofit agency. We do need your support. Ask you to consider giving and encourage others to give and to send those donations to our P.O. Box, which is 35029 here in Fayetteville 28303. If you have any questions or suggestions for us, please feel free to call the office at 672-1600. Again, Jacob and Stuart are your readers this morning, and we are glad to be with you on this chilly Saturday morning. Let's go ahead and take a look now at Bill Kirby's column, and all these next few articles are related to various things about Veterans Day. They are everywhere around us in this community, Bill writes. They are veterans, the men and women who wear and have worn a military uniform from all branches of service. Mike Fairfax is one of them. There are a lot of scars in combat, Fairfax was saying Friday. Fairfax is 42. He joined fellow veterans Norman Coltrane, Leon Hope, Don Talbot, Jim Arp, and Mary Ellen Nye Shugard to assist the Cross Creek Briarwood Garden Club members to place a red, white, and blue wreath on the Blue Star Memorial Highway marker that stands vigil over Freedom Memorial Park. Fairfax is a combat veteran. A prosthetic right leg is his evidence of sacrifice. A limb lost in 2005, the result of an improvised explosion device while the soldier was deployed in Afghanistan. There are a lot of things you carry inside, Fairfax says about the perils of war. He took pause in remembering his 23 years as a soldier. Veterans Day and Memorial Day go hand in hand with me, he would say, because it makes me think of those I served with who are gone. Coltrane, who is 76, thought to his time in Vietnam. You see behind me that wall, he would point to the park's Vietnam Memorial, and across the street to the moving Vietnam Wall at Veterans Park, where 58,000 didn't make it back home. Shugard would remember one of those 58,000, Sharon Lane, the first American woman to die on June 8, 1969, by hostile fire in Vietnam. I was a Vietnam nurse, and some think that there were no women serving in Vietnam, she would say. I served from 66 to 67 and from 70 to 71, and the first nurse killed was from Canton, Ohio. A rocket came through her Quonset hut, and she died. Sharon Lane was asleep in her bed. She was 25. Always tell her story, Shugard, 74, would say. No matter the sounds of the vehicle streaming down Hay Street past Freedom Memorial Park, there was a reverence whispering throughout World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, and the new global war on terror monuments remembering lives lost in service to this country. These are the killed in action in this park, said Talbot, the park curator and a Vietnam veteran. They gave all. For those who served and survived to return home, they gave nearly all and gave enough. And Fairfax gave all the more serving 3 more tours of duty in Afghanistan and becoming, he says, the first amputee to qualify for Jumpmaster School in '08. There are things you see in combat you don't think about at the time, Fairfax would say, but I had a lot of good friends I'll never see again. You carry that with you the rest of your life, and veterans understand what you have been through. This is Veterans Day. It is true, we walk among heroes every day. Many who have lost limbs and even their eyesight, Art, who is 56, a Fayetteville City councilman and veteran, would say. Take a moment and tell them thank you for their sacrifices, for being selfless and giving so much. God bless all of our veterans, not just today, mind you, but every day. This next article is again related to Veterans Day. A World War II counterintelligence soldier who was killed after his glider was struck by enemy fire on a mission in Germany will be remembered during a special ceremony at Fort Bragg this weekend. First Lieutenant Gerard Cameron, who was assigned to the inactivated 218th Counterintelligence Corps detachment that has been reorganized as the 525th Military Intelligence Brigade, will be remembered in a ceremony today. Another veteran of the detachment, John Gerlowski, will also be remembered. He was a retired Chief Warrant Officer 3 who died this year and was instrumental in pursuing Cameron's memorial. According to organization records, Cameron volunteered to participate in Operation Varsity, in which 16,000 paratroopers from Allied forces jumped into Wesel, Germany on March 24, 1945 to capture key territory to disrupt German defenses. The mission supported the forced crossing of the Rhine River, according to records. The glider aircraft Cameron was riding in was struck by enemy flak. It landed but caught fire and came under intense hostile fire, according to records. Cameron and the other occupants of the glider were killed, according to records. Cameron, from Princeton, New Jersey, was 36 when he died. Gerlowski retired in the late 1970s after serving in the 218th Military Intelligence Corps detachment. He is credited with conducting extensive research and collecting records for the detachment's history. The 218th Counterintelligence Corps detachment was activated at Fort DuPont, Delaware in 1944. At the time, the unit was attached to the 18th Airborne Corps, according to records. The detachment deployed with the Corps to Belgium to provide counteroffensive efforts in the Ardennes on December 18, 1944, during the Battle of the Bulge. After Operation Varsity, the detachment supported the Corps during the destruction of the German armies in the Ruhr. It returned to the United States and was inactivated at Camp Campbell, Kentucky on October 15, 1945. By 1952, the detachment had reactivated and was once again attached to the 18th Airborne Corps, now at Fort Bragg. The unit participated in counterintelligence efforts and briefly deployed to the Dominican Republic with the Corps in 1965, according to records. At Fort Bragg in '78, the detachment was again inactivated. The Corps Multidiscipline Intelligence Support was redesignated as the 525th Military Intelligence Brigade. The ceremony will be at the 525th Military Intelligence Brigade headquarters on Fort Bragg at 11 a.m. And staff writer Amanda Dolosinski wrote this article. This article is also about World War II veterans. 4 veterans were presented with long overdue World War II victory medals and service lapel pins on Friday during a Veterans Day ceremony in Fayetteville. One of the veterans, retired Army Tech 4 James W. Kennedy, was awarded the Bronze Star for his actions during combat in Germany in April of 1945. I remember that day, Kennedy, who is 95, said in an interview, "It was a tough day from start to finish." He said he did the best I could during the combat. The Veterans Legacy Foundation found that the 4 men were due these medals but never received them. U.S. Representative Richard Hudson and the North Carolina National Guard Captain James Waters presented the awards. In addition to Kennedy, the veterans who received the victory medals and service pins are 94-year-old retired Staff Sergeant John Owen, 90-year-old William C. Wade, and 91-year-old retired Sergeant James E. Harris. The veterans' family members were proud of their service and appreciative of the awards. Kennedy's granddaughter, Lisa Hall of Fayetteville, said he always focused on his troops. He never wanted to be behind a desk, she said. He had the opportunity, but he always wanted to be out in the field, so he never took those promotions. The country needs to continue to pay such respects to veterans such as these men, Hudson said. It's important that we honor them because the World War II generation is not going to be around forever. Every day we're losing more and more, so it's important that future generations see us honoring what these men did.
According to the opinion, merits and demerits, a big salute for this region's veterans. Gardening season ends today. Merit for the many observances of Veterans Day that are taking place across this region and through the weekend, and an even bigger merit for all of the veterans who are part of the fabric of this region. Nearly 75,000 of them. According to the VA records, military service to the nation is a bond that ties much of this region together, and respect for veterans, including benefits, job training, education, and even preferential parking spots, is more evident here than in most of the rest of the nation. This state has extended many programs to help veterans, to somehow repay our country's enormous debt to them. So of course, has Washington. Those efforts are sometimes still a work in progress, especially in this area of new veterans flooding into our cities and towns after service in America's two longest wars, Afghanistan and Iraq. The Department of Veterans Affairs has often struggled to keep peace with former soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines' needs. But that service has improved steadily, especially in this region. Kudos for the arrival of the Vietnam Moving Wall at the Airborne and Special Operations Museum downtown. The wall, like its full-size comrade in Washington, is a strong and emotional tribute to more than 58,000 service members who died or are still missing from that war. The wall is here as part of the annual Heroes Homecoming celebration, which concludes this weekend. Demerit. For the early arrival of freezing weather, the low temperatures last night and tonight likely to put an end to all but our hardiest garden crops. It's been great to be harvesting tomatoes, lettuce, and peppers until early November, but the veggie party's over, unless you've done a great job covering your crops. And while we're talking about the weather, a demerit as well for the stealthy resurgence of drought conditions in the state. The North Carolina Drought Management Advisory Council says large portions of the Piedmont are already in moderate drought conditions. Abnormally dry conditions spread all the way down into northern Cumberland County. While the growing season for most crops is pretty much ending this weekend, a look upstream shows low water in the Cape Fear and lots of exposed lake bottom on Jordan Lake. We could use a few more rainy days to stay out of more serious drought conditions. Merit for the volunteers from Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina and the USO of North Carolina, who set up shop at Hay Street United Methodist Church on Thursday and went to work assembling 75 bicycles that would be lies shortly after noon Thursday. The kids lined up outside the church and then walked through a row of volunteers who cheered as they walked through the room to pick out their new bike. It's great to see an early start to the holiday giving. Santa's spirit arrived ahead of schedule this year, and we hope that it's a sign of more good things to come. Merit for the Fayetteville Police Department efforts to correct a horrendous mistake. The department discovered in 2015 that more than 300 rape kits from the department's unsolved sexual assault cases have been destroyed to free more space in the evidence room. Then Chief Harold Medlock ordered the cases reopened, and the cold case sexual assault unit began finding and contacting the affected victims to tell them what happened. It's taken the unit 2 years to locate most of the victims. The decision to get rid of the kids was made in 2006. So finding all those victims was no easy task. With the help of federal grant, the police and rape crisis volunteers of Cumberland County were able to hire and advocate to help with the job. The volunteers were able to help even some victims who had moved out of state, and cold case detectives have been able to make the 3 arrests in the cases. Merit. For Los Angeles real estate developer Jim Thomas and his wife Sally, who have pledged $7 million to the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. It's the largest ever donation in the school's history. The gift pushed the university closer to the building a state-of-the-art facility for the School of Business. The building will include a career center, an auditorium, a video conference room, a computer lab, a trading room, collaborative lounges, and multimedia resource center. Jim Thomas is a native of Pembroke and a former owner of the NBA Sacramento Kings. UNCP Chancellor Robin Cummings said the gift will go far beyond changing the university campus. It will also transform Pembroke and the region around it. It is expected to create generations of business executives and entrepreneurs. Publix to hold grand opening. Fayetteville store will be first location for company in region by Mitchell Futch, staff writer. Publix opens its doors to the public this morning. The Publix supermarket at Tallywood Shopping Center, the company first store in the area. It is scheduled to open its grand opening at 7 a.m. Until now, shoppers had to drive to Cary, Apex, and Wilmington to reach the nearest Publix. The Florida-based chain entered North Carolina several years ago. We're so excited to be a part of Cumberland County, part of Fayetteville, spokeswoman Kim Reynolds said Friday during a sneak peek of the supermarket at 3114 Rayford Road. The 49,500 square feet business operates largely from the former site of Belk Department Store. On Friday, company representatives and store officials held an invitation-only preview for the media and local degenerates. Brett Bennett, of age 32, was in the mix. He's a store manager with 14 and a half years experience with Publix, and he comes to Fayetteville after serving as a store manager in Pensacola, Florida. He will oversee a staff of 175 employees. Here are 5 things to know about the store, what makes it unique to the community. What sets Publix apart from the other supermarkets in the Fayetteville area? Publix. Reynolds answered that question by saying it was providing premier customer service. These services, she said, include complimentary carryouts for those who need assistance taking items to their vehicles and escorting customers to an item they are looking for on the shelves. She also cited the quality products that the chain of 1,160 Publix stores carry. Among them are more than 200 domestic and international varieties of artesian cheeses. A certified cheese specialist staffs this full-service area to assist with selecting and pairing cheeses with other foods and spirits. According to publicity Marshall's provided to the media, what really sets us apart are our associates and that customer service, Reynolds said. Of the 175 associates who will work at the new location, she said, 130 to 140 of them are local hires. What can customers expect to find in the store? An average Publix store carries 35,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
40,000.
I got it. Sorry, got a little dry throat there. Let's turn to another article from the business page about Duck Donuts coming to Ramsey Street. Donuts are on the menu today along with the slabs of barbecued ribs. Those who frequent Ramsey Street in North Fayetteville may like to know that a Duck Donuts is going up next to the Aldi grocery store. A sign already has been posted on the site. This will mark the second Duck Donuts store in Fayetteville and the third in the region for the change that started on the Outer Banks. The first Duck Donuts to locate here opened October 14th of 2016 on Skybow Road in the shopping center near Burlington and Academy Sports and Outdoors. Like that store, the new one will be owned by Eric Nelson, who ran Big City Bagels and Deli on Santa Fe Drive in the 90s. In August, he opened a Duck Donuts in Southern Pines. They're both doing really well, said Amanda Register, who is marketing specialist for Nelson's Beaver Creek Foods. In an interview in March, he called Duck Donuts sort of like the Subway of the donut world. The new Fayetteville location probably will be opening sometime in the spring, Register said. So those along Ramsey Street will soon be able to say hello to maple bacon, peanut butter icing, and a batch of other made-to-order donuts. By the way, the original store opened in '06 in the coastal town of Duck, and that's where the name Duck Donuts comes from. In Spout Springs, that mushrooming community on North Carolina 87 between Spring Lake and Sanford is home to a new Dunkin' Donuts, which is actually a Dunkin' Donuts Baskin-Robbins combination. Today, in honor of Veterans Day, free coffee and a donut will be served up to all veterans and active military who drop by from 10 to noon. Very nice. Another retail-related article, the same folks who own Bernie's Sweets and more off Rayford Road are opening a Southern Cole's barbecue restaurant next door. That permanent location will have its roots in a popular food truck that has made the rounds over the last 2 to 2.5 years. Southern Cole's will be moving into space that used to be occupied by a soul food restaurant. The space is under renovation for the new tenant. Really, the idea was just to do the food truck and catering, said Jana Humphrey, who is one of the owners. Most other Bernie's have lunches and breakfast. When we opened the storefront here for Bernie's, we did not have room for storage. We just don't have the room. We decided we could do it next door. The kitchen was already there. Once they settled into the new space, plans call for the food truck to largely be used for catering. Besides Humphrey, the business will be owned by Jana's husband, Chip, and Jason and Holly Hare. Humphrey said they are hoping to be open around the second week of December. Southern Cole's Barbecue specializes in seasoned barbecued ribs, briskets, wings, smoked turkey, and ham and pork shoulders. Just the good Southern food, she said. Chicken salad, vegetables, green beans, macaroni, and cheese. We'll be doing some salads and things like that. Brisket, pork chops, we'll be cooking that on site. As crossover operations, Southern Cole's Barbecue will serve Bernie's desserts, such as the banana pudding that has gone over well with customers. Hours are expected to be 10 to 3 p.m., 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Friday. Humphrey says she was uncertain about Saturdays. Those who are curious to know what's going up on the northeast corner of Rayford Road and Glenford Drive, well, it's a Circle K gas station and convenience store, according to the city of Fayetteville. In the convenience store business, Circle K has evolved into a powerhouse in the Fayetteville area, competing with the likes of Kangaroo Express, Express Mart, Shortstop, and BP. Okay, let's look at another article by Bill Kirby today. Brandon Smalls is a sophomore at Fayetteville Christian School battling cancer, and students at the private school are giving their all to let their schoolmate know he is not alone in the fight. We have had raffles, bills for Brandon, where classrooms compete to bring in the most dollar bills, says Tammy Peters, the school's longtime principal. So far, we have raised $10,000. One young 6th grade student held a weekend yard sale and earned $180 to donate to his family. Brandon has been diagnosed with I'll butcher this, but it's some kind of sarcoma, Peter says. which is a type of cancerous tumor that arises in the soft tissue such as muscles, according to the St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital website. The $10,000 is being given to Brandon's family as they seek treatment costs to find a cure. The family needs $27,000, Peter said. If you would like to help the FCS students help Brandon, you can call 483-3905. When you give to the United Way, it makes no difference what you give, says Robert Hines, Chief Executive Officer of the Cumberland County United Way. What you give, no matter, it makes a difference. This was truly a great honor to be recognized by the Centennial Legion, says Don Talbot, who received a medal for his Americanism on November 4th at a change of command banquet at the 82nd annual meeting of the Centennial Legion of Historic Military Commands hosted by the Fayetteville Independent Light Infantry. Retired U.S. Army Major General William Kirkland and retired Command Sergeant Major George Hogan will be honorary guests today as the Border Belt Museum in Fairmont pays a Veterans Day tribute to those who have served this country. The drop-in event gets underway at 9 a.m. and every veteran is invited to come by for coffee, juice, cinnamon buns, and fellowship. Uncle Sam wanted you, and proudly you serve or have served. Now the Cape Fear Botanical Garden wants you too. We are so excited to be able to offer free admission to such amazing people who sacrifice everything for our country, Marissa Freshley, events manager at the Garden, says about the Veterans Day at the Garden, which is scheduled from noon to 5 today at the facility just off Old US 301. We love giving back to our community, and this is one of the ways that we can do that. Active duty servicemen and servicewomen, their families and veterans, and their families will be admitted at no charge to tour the gardens, enjoy food trucks, crafts, games, and music, thanks to sponsors Lafayette Ford Lincoln, Red Door Homes, and Cabinets and Cates Communities. The Garden held its first Veterans Day Festival at the Garden in 2016. Freshly says in a news release, that saw 1,500 turn out to honor our military. For more information, you can call 486-0221. Okay.
Sorry about that earlier. Remembering Mamie Lee Cameron Robinson. Along with celebrating Veterans Day today, I will also celebrate Mamie Lee Cameron Robinson. I will celebrate her life because, although not a veteran of the armed forces, she would nevertheless was a person with long experiences. Another definition for a veteran. I met Miss Robinson in 1975 when I joined John Wesley United Methodist Church. She was one of the members who took me under her wings, just like a mother hen would do her chicks. She was nurturing and encouraging. When I experienced anxiety over the challenges of raising my children, as most parents do, she provided sound advice without being too preachy. A couple of sentences suffice because she covered them with wisdom, conviction, empathy. She let me know she believed in me and my children. That made all the difference. Mamie Cramen was born on November 11th, 1911, to Dred D. and Mary Annabelle Cameron. She was born into during the day a progressive family. Her family believed strongly in education during the time sorry about that. Her family believed strongly in education during a time when more than half the population in rural areas were undereducated and were not adequate schools for blacks. Her parents, however, would not succumb to the unfair conditions and the challenges of times. They were determined to educate their children. Mame and her three brothers attended Broadway Elementary School, in Broadway. Since there was no high school in Broadway, her mom, by what time a widow, sent the two older boys to Greensboro to AT&T to A&T High School. Later, Mame and her youngest brother lived with a cousin in Sanford, North Carolina, so they could attend high school that had been built there. She graduated from W.B. Wicker High School in 1933. Mamie inherited a strong-minded personality from her mother and always thought to continue her education. She moved to Fayetteville, North Carolina, and boarded with different people, a common practice during that era. While attending Fayetteville State University, known then as Fayetteville State Normal School, there she met prospective husband Joseph Herman and Robinson. They married and had 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys. She was a stay-at-home mom during her children's formative years. She's not only a mother to her children, but was the adopted mother to other children in the neighborhood. Some still called her mom up until her death. She was a great homemaker, a dedicated and loving wife and mother. As the years passed, she became a doting grandmother and great-grandmother. She was a staunch supporter of education and participated in the Parent-Teacher Association. Later, she would work as a teacher's aside and as a teacher at the Fuller School for Exceptional Children. She worked there until she retired. Her educational values and belief in higher learning did not go unheeded. All of her children and grandchildren and college graduates. Miss Robinson died September 6 of 2017. She was 105 years old, according to research on the internet. When Miss Robinson was born, the average life expectancy for a woman was 51.5 years. What was amazing feat that she lived long enough to more than double that expectancy. When she was born, the constitutional amendment granting American women the right to vote had not passed. Indoor plumbing was a rarity, and no modern supermarkets existed. Walking, riding on horseback, or in a horse-drawn wagon were the models of transportation for the majority of people. When she was born, William Howard Taft was president. During her lifetime, 18 candidates were elected to the office of president. The highlight of those elections for her was pride and gratitude she felt when Barack Obama, a black man, was elected to be president. On Veterans Day, I will remember all veterans whose service allows me to live in a free country. A country that I love, a country that is not without imperfection, but a country of boundless opportunities. I will give thanks to Miss Robinson on that day, would have been her birthday, for touching my life so profoundly. I always admired her for her outspokenness, intelligence, wit, and elegant style. She was truly a great mentor. Her voice will echo in my mind, and her presence and love will be felt in my heart. Her legacy will live on. Driver's swerves. Crack.
Okay, we're at the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and do the obituaries now. Let's begin with the late death notices. Miss Cheryl J. Stanley, 72, of Spring Lake, Herring Funeral Home. Layden Maynor, an infant, of Fayetteville, Herring Funeral Care. Kellen Montreal Harley, another infant, of Fayetteville, Colvin Funeral Home. 2 infants. Donnie Franklin Strange, 58, of Fayetteville, Colvin Funeral Home. Samika Conyers, 37, of Fayetteville, Wiseman Mortuary. From the region, Miss Lisa Tejada Peterson, 60, of Sampson Street in Clinton, Worley Funeral Home. Marilyn Vale, 59, of Lumber Bridge, Bowles Funeral Home, Red Springs. Anita L. Farisha, 81, of Rayford, Lafayette Funeral Home. And now to the obituaries. Charles A. Melton died November 8, 2017. Funeral service will be held Sunday, November 12th at 3 p.m. at Cedar Falls Baptist Church. The family will receive friends from 2 to 3 prior to the service at the church. A graveside service will be held Wednesday, November 15th at the Sand Hill State Veterans Cemetery, Jernigan, Warren. Eloise Spence Hurdle died November 9th, 2017. A short graveside celebration of life will be held Sunday, November 12th at 2:30 at Lafayette Memorial Park on Ramsey Street. The family will receive friends and visitors at the graveside immediately following the service. And that is, let's see, did I see who's handling those arrangements? Let's see that. Okay, Mary H. Simmons, Mary Lee Hickok Simmons of Bladenboro passed away Friday, November 10th. The family will receive friends on Saturday, November 11th from 6 to 8 at Bladen Gaskin's funeral home in Elizabethtown. The funeral service will be on Sunday, November 12th at 3 p.m. at Hickory Grove Baptist Church in Bladenboro. The funeral service will be performed by Reverend Bruce Miller, and the burial will follow in the Hickory Grove Baptist Church Cemetery. Mr. Charles Joe Augustoni III, who was 66, passed away at Cape Fear Valley Medical Center on November 9th. A graveside service will be held at 1 p.m. Sunday, November 12th at the Rayford Cemetery. The family will receive friends after the service at the cemetery, and that's Crumpler Funeral Home handling those arrangements. William Wright, 81, of Fayetteville, died Sunday, November 5th. His funeral is Wednesday at 12:30 at First Christian Church. The visitation is at Rogers and Breese Funeral Home Tuesday from 6 to 8. The burial is at Sand Hill State Veterans Cemetery, and that's Rogers and Breese Funeral Home. Jeffrey Mitchell Bream, 50, of Parkton, died Thursday, November 9th. The funeral is Sunday at 2 p.m. and that's Pinecrest Funeral and Cremation Services of Hope Mills. The visitation is at the funeral home Sunday 1 to 2 p.m. and the burial is at Colberth Cemetery. Debbie Faye Bordeaux died on November 6, 2017. A memorial service will be held at 3 p.m. Sunday, November 12th at Rogers and Breese Funeral Home with Reverend Tommy Underwood officiating. The family will receive friends immediately following the service at the funeral home. Thomas Philip Coyne, 82, of Fayetteville, died Saturday, November 4th. The funeral is Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. at St. Patrick Catholic Church. The visitation is at Rogers and Breese Funeral Home Monday from 6 to 8 p.m. The burial is at Sand Hill State Veterans Cemetery. Clyde Wesley Swain, 80, of Aberdeen, died Wednesday, November 8th. The memorial is Saturday at 11 a.m. First Missionary Baptist Church in South Gain Street in Southern Pines. There will be no public viewing, and that's Simon Funeral Home in Southern Pines. Diane Smith, 60, of Maxton, died Monday, November 6th. The funeral is Sunday at 2 p.m. at Union Light Baptist Church. The visitation is at the church Saturday from 6 to 8 p.m. The burial is in Union Light Baptist Church Cemetery, and that's Bowles Funeral Home, Red Springs. Vivi Stanbro of Sneed's Ferry died Thursday, November 9th. The funeral is Tuesday at 3 p.m. at Yawp Family Cemetery. The viewing is at Jones Funeral Home in Holly Ridge, Tuesday from 1 to 2, and that's Jones Funeral Home. Esther Judith Horn of Autryville died Friday, November 10th. The memorial is Sunday at 3 p.m. at Butler Funeral Home. The visitation is at the funeral home Saturday from 6 to 8. Butler Funeral Home of Stedman. Billy Fred Bullard, 80, of Roseboro, died Friday, November 10th. The memorial is Monday at 7 p.m. Beaver Dam Baptist Church. The visitation is at the church Monday from 5 to 7, and that's Butler Funeral Home of Stedman. And Alejandro Cantu, 24, of Cameron, died Sunday, November 5th. His funeral is Sunday at 3 p.m. at Lafayette Funeral Home, and the visitation is at the funeral home Sunday from 1 to 3.
Billy Graham. Pray that God gives peace to our veterans and their families. Billy Graham. Question. My husband is in the military and on his second deployment overseas. I know his work is important and all that, but it's really been hard on our 2 children and me. Please pray for us because it's tough being alone all the time. Miss J.H. Today is Veterans Day in the United States, a special day that has been set aside to honor all those who have kept our nation free throughout their military service. The Bible says, hate what is evil, cling to what is good, honor one another. Romans 12:9 through 10. Today we also honor all those like your husband who are currently on active duty in the military. We live in a dangerous and complex world, and without their sacrifice and dedication to our lives would be far different from what they actually are. I know every reader of this column is grateful for those like your husband who continue to defend our nation from its enemies. It's not an accident. It only remains strong if we defend it and use it responsibly. But your letter also reminds us of our sacrifice, you and the countless other families have made and are making. On behalf of our men and women in the military, I hope every reader will pause to thank God for the families of our service personnel, including their parents and other relatives, and to ask God to encourage them and give them His peace. These are, I know, difficult days for you, but God knows what you're going through, and He loves you and watches over you. Commit your burdens and your whole life into Christ's hands, and thank Him for His presence and with you every day. Readers can write to Reverend Billy Graham at the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, 1 Billy Graham Parkway, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28201, or call 877-2-GRAHAM. The website for Billy Graham has Evangelistic Association is at billygraham.org. Tribune Media Services. Dear Abby, 3-year age difference complicates teenage crush. Dear Abby, I'm a 17-year-old girl and a junior in high school. I have a crush on a guy who's 14 years old and a freshman. I know age gaps don't matter as much later on, but the difference between 17 and 14 can be drastic. Jake is really sweet, and he's as interested in me as I am in him. Unlike the boys in my grade, I'm friends with Jake's sister, Julie, who's a year older than me and a senior. Julie has made it clear that she doesn't like the idea of a romantic relationship between Jake and me, because Jake is only 14. What can I do? Should I ignore this crush? I have judged people who have dated despite age gaps. For example, a senior boy dating a sophomore girl, but now I understand it. If the girl is older, does that complicate things? I don't want to be seen as creepy or gross, but to be honest, I'm not that experienced romantically or socially myself. I've never been to a real party. Must I forget my feelings and move on? Or do I talk to Julie and try to pursue this teen crush? Dear teen crush, Julie has already given you her answer. As you have pointed out, there's a bias against dating someone so much younger, and it could cause you problems not only with your peers but also with the law if your relationship were to become sexual when you turn 18. That's why I'm suggesting you turn your romantic interest elsewhere. When you're both adults, if you're still interested, you can pursue a romantic relationship then. Readers can write to Abby at dearabby.com or P.O. Box 69440, Los Angeles, California 90069, Universal Unclipped.
This article comes out of Charlotte. In 2016, Braxton Winston stood shirtless with fist raised in front of riot police, defiantly protesting a black man's fatal shooting by a police officer. A photograph of that bold protest drew national attention amid a U.S. groundswell against the killings of young African Americans by police. Now, a little more than a year later, Winston has taken his passion into politics, winning a seat on the Charlotte City Council. Winston, who is black, was elected Tuesday to one of 4 at-large council seats in North Carolina's largest city. Voters also elected the city's first African-American woman as mayor, and that's Democrat Vi Lyles. They and others will be sworn in December 4th. Suddenly, Winston, instead of challenging government, is part of it. It became clear that this is what I have to do, Winston said, to continue to be an advocate for all of Charlotte, but especially for the marginalized voices in the community. Winston, who's 34, who had played football at Davidson College, said he had just coached a middle school team to a football victory on September 20th, 2016. It was that day when Keith Lamont Scott was fatally shot by a black Charlotte-Mecklenburg officer during a police search for another person at a townhome complex. The shooting was sparked days of civil unrest, leading to a death, dozens of arrests, and millions of dollars in damage. No charges were filed against Officer Brentley Vinson, and in August, a Citizens Review Board voted 4-4 in announcing it wouldn't challenge the department's finding that the officer's shooting was justified. In June, the Review Board said it found a potential error in the police department's decision, but it didn't elaborate. Friends of Winston, a father of 3 known for his activism, told him about the shooting, so instead of going to his job as a stagehand or heading home to be with his visiting mother from Brooklyn, he went straight to the shooting site as the protest unfolded. I was about to leave and I heard Keith Lamont Scott's daughter running through the crowd, and they were taking his SUV out on a flatbed, Winston told the Associated Press in an interview. Her voice was so shrill, it was like, "That's my daddy's car. Why did you kill my daddy?" He resolved to stay, adding, I felt like if there was ever a time that the people had the right to be angry and express that to their government, it was at that time. Protesters threw rocks and bottles, drawing police tear gas. Winston decided to make his stand. A photographer from the Charlotte Observer captured the image. "My shirt was off because I tried to make a mask from the tear gas," he recalled. "I knew that the fist was a symbol." Winston would also join a protest outside Bank of America Stadium the following Sunday as the Carolina Panthers played a game. There he was arrested under Charlotte's extraordinary event ordinance, an ordinance since repealed, though charges were later dropped. "I felt like I was targeted," he said. After the protest subsided, Winston took his concerns to local community leaders and joined others who were dissatisfied and pressing for new leadership willing to affect change. As the months started to creep by, the voice that I wanted to hear and other people wanted to hear wasn't showing up. It became a matter of, if not me, then who, and if not now, then when. On Thursday, after his election, he attended a meeting at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Government Center. He said he was pleased the community put its trust in him. "All of a sudden, now, I'm responsible for administering these systemic inequities," he told the AP, vowing office holding won't change them. "Really, I'm ready to get down to work." Now let's take a look at Dana Milbank's column for today. Dana's a writer for the Washington Post. He writes about Wilbur Ross, the Secretary of the Commerce in the Trump administration. He writes, "Oh, Wilbur, President Trump's billionaire Commerce Secretary has a big problem. He is apparently not a billionaire." Forbes magazine, keeper of the Forbes 400 list of wealthiest Americans, reports that it dropped Ross from its list this year because of a phantom $2 billion that Ross claimed he had but apparently does not exist. Instead of the $3.7 billion Ross claimed he was worth, his financial disclosure shows less than $700 million in assets. Most Americans, upon being told they were worth only $700 million, would say, "Please don't throw me into that briar patch." But Ross was disgraced and mad. He claimed to Forbes that he transferred $2 billion into trust for his children and others, but offered no proof, and this claim was contradicted by his own staff. Forbes performed some forensics and concluded that Ross had been lying for years about his wealth. As for the missing $2 billion, Forbes reports Forbes is confident it has found the answer. That money never existed. It seems clear that Ross lied to us, the latest in an apparent sequence of fibs, exaggerations, omissions, fabrications, and whoppers that have been going on with Forbes since '04. In addition to just padding his ego, Ross' machinations helped bolster his standing in a way that translated into business opportunities. And based on our interviews with 10 former employees at Ross's private equity firm, who all confirmed parts of the same storyline, his penchant for misleading extended to colleagues and investors, resulting in millions in dollars of fines, tens of millions refunded to backers, and numerous lawsuits. It was a beautiful business model. If he appeared to be richer than he was, more rich people gave him their money to invest. Rich people like rich people. But now, at a paltry $700 million, he's a nobody. I empathize with Ross. Each year I tell People magazine that I should be featured in its Sexiest Man Alive issue. I explain that my biceps and pecs are much larger than they appear because I've transferred several inches into a trust for my children, but I never make the cover. Ross has a problem I do not have, however. He is in Trump's cabinet because he is a putative billionaire, and Trump respects only billionaires and generals. He fired Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price for hiring private jets at the taxpayer's dime, but there was suspicion that the real cause for his dismissal was his inability to afford his own private jet. He sacked Anthony Scaramucci after a profanity-laced tirade, but perhaps the real reason was he learned the mooch was worth only about $50 million. It probably won't help that news of Ross missing $2 billion comes just after the discovery from leaked documents that he invested some of the precious millions he does have in a venture with people very close to Vladimir Putin. Forbes' Dan Alexander reports that Ross has been conniving for 13 years to inflate his wealth in the Forbes tally, which was based on an error, counting all of his investors' money as his own. The listing reportedly serves as an attractant to Ross's third wife. Starting to sound a bit familiar? Well, consider that Ross's former colleagues also told Forbes that Ross bends the truth. Yes, he has much in common with a certain orange person whose Forbes dropped 92 spots in the Forbes 400 last month. Trump at $3.1 billion insists he is worth more, but refuses to prove it. The two Truth Challenge men have been pals since at least 1990, but they worked out a deal for Trump's Taj Mahal casino, which was careening towards bankruptcy, Forbes reports. Surely these two men, both skilled in illusion and deception, can together come up with a better explanation for what happened to Ross's $2 billion. He bought 2 billion rolls of very good paper towels for Puerto Rico. He used it to hire tutors for Donald Trump Jr. He paid for Omarosa Manigault's bridal party at the White House. He donated it to all the veterans charities Trump promised to support. He spent it at the bar at the Trump International in Washington. Heck, Ross could even be better off claiming he lost all $2 billion on a failed business deal with Putin. In Trump world, it is better to have been a billionaire and lost than never to have been a billionaire at all.
Letters to the Observer. How to deal with panhandling. Panhandling is definitely a problem. I have great sympathy for those in need of the necessities of life. I choose to give to church organizations and operational in such manner. It also makes sense to give food to someone who is hungry. A coat to the cold. I recognize that giving money to beggars does not solve the problem and often makes the situation worse. In many countries, unscrupulous parents maim their own children in an effort to make their panhandling more profitable. Since we ultimately have to throw money at problems to make them more manageable, why not post educational signs at key areas of panhandling? A billboard in an appropriate area could also be effective. People with good hearts need to know that they are performing a disservice when they give money to someone who will most likely use it to exacerbate their addictions. Successful panhandling takes time and effort that could be spent productively. Someone could come up with much better signage than I, but the message could be: 1. Please do not give money to the beggars. The term panhandling changes the reality in some way in my mind. 2. Please give to charity of your choice which seeks to help those in need. 3. Do not make the problem worse by contributing to addictions and illness. 4. Do the right thing rather than easing your conscience by contributing to the problem. NC Editorial Roundup. Don't price natural parks out of reach. The Star News Wilmington on admission fees for U.S. national parks. The sky-high admission fees for U.S. national parks you might have heard about won't affect any of the parks around here. The National Park Service October 24th proposal included no federal parks in North Carolina. If you want to go to the Grand Canyon, though, or to Yellowstone or Yosemite or 13 other high-demand parks on many folks' buckets list, well, it's going to cost you. If the proposal passes, entrance fees at those parks could rise next year from $25 or $30 or $70 per private car, $50 per tourist on a motorcycle, or $30 per head for folks who want to hike in. These new fees represent an irritating trend in governance in place of honest taxation for the common welfare. Citizens are nickel and dimed. The NC General Assembly, for example, is slapping sales tax on everything from movie tickets to auto repairs. Entry to our state parks and generally free. Let's hope the honorables don't notice what the feds are up to. In a better world, those fees would fall by the wayside, and citizens would demand that their congressmen give the parks the money they need and deserve. It would be a shame to make our national heritage a gated community. A bad idea needs to be stopped. The News and Observer of Raleigh on the idea for a separate University of North Carolina Board of Governors staff. The North Carolina Board of Governors oversees policies for the campus of the UNC systems, but the board broad duties don't mean it needs to set up a sort of separate staff that will report directly to the board instead of the president, Margaret Spellings, and her administrators. The idea is apparently springing from some board members, but on temporary hold now. It is not productive one. Spellings have already reported to the board that there are no reason for the BOG to have its very own separate staff. That would be potentially confusing and worse. Would individual campus leaders, for example, feel the need to report to the board staffs as well as the Spellings? Might some campus leaders try and end run around the president in order to promote some cause of their own that might not be favored by the president? This is a very bad idea that would make the president's job tougher and would confuse the leaders of other campuses. Worst cost. Winston-Salem Journal on U.S. Representative Walter Jones signing letters to families of troops who have died in service. By all indications, Republican Representative Walter Jones of Eastern North Carolina is a man who has learned the lesson of war. It's real and it has permanent consequences. More than 11,000 times in the last 14 years, Jones, a Republican who represents the 3rd Congressional District of North Carolina, has signed letters to families members of troops who died in service, the Associated Press reported recently.
Okay, let's look at an article related to some of the events that happened with American soldiers in Niger. The body of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, one of 4 U.S. soldiers killed in an ambush by Islamist militants in Niger last month, was found with his arms tied and a gaping wound in the back of his head, according to 2 villagers, suggesting that he may have been captured and then executed. Abamu Bubakar, a 23-year-old farmer and trader, said some children tending cattle found the remains of the soldier October 6, 2 days after the attack, outside the remote Niger village of Tongo Tongo, which also left 5 Nigerian soldiers dead, the kids notified him. When Bubakar went to the location, a bushy area roughly a mile from the ambush site, he saw Johnson's body lying face down. The back of his head had been smashed by something, possibly a bullet. The soldier's wrists were bound with rope, he said, raising the possibility that the militants, whom the Pentagon suspects were affiliated with the Islamic State, seized Johnson during the firefight and held him captive. The villagers' accounts come as the Niger operation is under intense scrutiny in the United States, with lawmakers expressing concern that they have received insufficient or conflicting information about what happened. The Pentagon is conducting an investigation into the attack in Niger, where the U.S. military is helping the Nigerian government confront a threat by militants associated with the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. Boubacar, a resident of Tongo Tongo, said in a phone interview that he informed the village's chief after seeing Johnson's body. His two arms were tied behind his back. The chief called Nigerian military forces, who dispatched troops to retrieve Johnson's remains. The village chief of Tongo Tongo, Monkela Alassane, confirmed the account in a separate phone interview. The back of his head was a mess, as if they had hit him with something hard like a hammer, recalled Alassane, who said he also saw the body. They took his shoes. He was wearing only socks. A U.S. military official with knowledge of the investigation into the ambush acknowledged that Johnson's body appeared viciously battered, but cautioned against reaching any conclusions until the probe is completed. When the Americans received Johnson, his hands were not tied, said the U.S. official, who spoke on the condition of anonymity. The two Tongo Tongo villagers said they also saw the bodies of the three other American soldiers, Brian Black, Jeremiah Johnson, and Dustin Wright, who U.S. officials say were killed in action. One was slumped inside the team's pickup truck. The bodies of the other two were on the ground, one clutching a walkie-talkie. They were wearing T-shirts and boxer shorts, the two men said. It was unclear whether the militants had stripped off their uniforms. The accounts could help explain why it took 2 days to find Johnson's body, while the other men's remains were retrieved several hours after the battle. Johnson's widow has said that the U.S. military advised her not to view his body, a suggestion often made when remains are badly disfigured. The widow, Laisha Johnson, has emerged as a prominent figure in the uproar over the Niger attack, accusing President Donald Trump of acting cavalierly about her husband in a condolence call, a charge the White House has denied. She has also complained of receiving little information about what happened to her husband. Well, a completely different subject is the ongoing tax reform debate on Capitol Hill. So this article is related to that, with the latest update of where those negotiations are. The House and Senate tax overhaul plans are similar, but crucial differences are creating headaches for Republican leaders. And then there's the timetable they've set of finishing in time to get the final version to President Donald Trump by Christmas. Here's a rundown on the major differences. The Senate measure keeps the number of personal income tax brackets at 7, though it changes the rates to 10, 12, 22.5, 25, 32.5, 35, and 38.5%. The House bill shrinks the number of tax brackets from 7 to 4, with percentage rates of 12%, 25%, 35%, and 39.6%. The inheritance tax on multi-million-dollar estates, called the estate tax, is an especially hot-button issue. Currently, when someone dies, the person inheriting the estate must pay taxes on its value above $5.5 million for individuals and $11 million for couples. The House bill doubles those limits and then repeals the whole tax after 2023. The Senate version doubles those exemption amounts but doesn't repeal the tax. On deductions, the Senate bill would eliminate a taxpayer's ability to deduct state and local income taxes, but the final bill may have to closely track a House compromise that provides a property tax deduction of up to $10,000. The Senate bill preserves popular individual tax breaks for large medical expenses, mortgage interest, electric vehicles, and college costs that were targeted by the House. The House limits deductibility of mortgage interest to the first $500,000 of a loan and eliminates the deduction for medical expenses. On business rates, both the House and the Senate versions slash the tax rate for corporations to 20% from the current 35%, But there's a big twist. The Senate bill delays the rate cut for a year. Trump actually had been demanding 15% and reportedly was initially furious at the 20% figure. The issue is setting the corporate rate at a level that experts and tax writers believe would bring the U.S. closer to its overseas competitors. The electric car industry, notably makers Tesla and Chevrolet, and producers of wind power for generating electricity are losers under the House bill. The tax credit of up to $7,500 for plug-in electric vehicles would be repealed and the credit for wind energy would be reduced. But the Senate version retains the incentives. The loss of tax credits for renewable energy would free billions to help pay for the corporate tax cuts in the legislation. But in addition to environmentalist objections, the prospect also angers some Republican senators, including powerful Chuck Grassley of Iowa, who has vowed to defend the credit. There's a special rate for businesses whose profits are counted in the owner's personal tax returns. Millions of U.S. businesses use this pass-through format. The House bill taxes many of them at the maximum 25%, down from 39% currently, and adds a lower minimum rate. The Senate version would set a new 17% deduction for pass-through income, aimed to help smaller businesses.
And now on to the World Editorial Roundup. Corporation better than blame game. China Daily on President Donald Trump's commendments during his visit to Japan. U.S. President Donald Trump once again hoped on his favorite Betty Noir trade deficits during his recent visits to Japan, the first stop on his 5-country Asia tour, saying his country had suffered massive trade deficits at the hands of Japan for many years. Trump is expected to play the same card when he visits Beijing after a stop in South Korea. This week he called the United States trade deficit with China embarrassing and horrible ahead of his trip. His criticism of the country's major trade partners in Asia may win him support back home from those who believe his claim that unfair trade practices have stripped jobs and wealth from the U.S. Decade after decade, trade deficit upon trade deficit, as he said in March, but his argument that the U.S. is a loser in global trade simply because of the massive trade deficits it has incurred each year is misleading and fails to reflect the real benefits the country has gained from the existing global trade and economic regime. Trump's lambasting of the United States trade partners and his vows that under his administration the theft of American prosperity will in play with the crowd end, no doubt they will serve to distract attention from his troubles at home. But they do nothing to help revitalize the U.S. economy. Unless he can gain a few favors from other leaders or boost the global economy. Instead of criticizing his host, Trump should seek to promote cooperation to advance free and reciprocal trade to benefit of both the region and the world. Will Kim be pressured into talks? The Sydney, Australia Morning Herald on judging President Trump's Asia tour. As Donald Trump prepared for his 5-nation Asia tour, the longest undertaken by any American leader since 1991, many regional observers were understandably nervous. The president's nearly diplomatic efforts are now best remembered for his odd habit of arm wrestling world leaders as they sought to shake his hand. Upon winning government, the Trump administration's first key signal to its friends and allies across Asia was to dump the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which most considered to be a vital strategic and economic response to China's growing regional authority. Since then, the president has appeared unduly fixated on bilateral trade relationships, and his sense that the U.S. should somehow be winning them. His rhetorical and positioning on the region has been at times incoherent, at times dangerously inflammatory. His threats to rain fire and fury upon North Korea only heightened the sense that the horrifying specter of nuclear war was closer than it had been in a generation. Meanwhile, North Korea's dictator Kim Jong-un demonstrated a consistent determination to continue his nuclear development program, marking off technological advances with a rapidity that stunned international observers. But so far, during this crucial tour, the president conducts and language will mostly have been a source of relief to his hosts. Opinion: Puerto Rico has earned our economy help. Let us remember our fellow Americans in Puerto Rico. The Caribbean island is still in a state of desperate need. The power is still out for 70% of residents, as is cell phone service. 6 weeks after Hurricane Maria blew through, toppling buildings and stripping bare the lush landscape, Veterans Day is a good time to remember Puerto Rico, especially here in Fayetteville, home of Fort Bragg. Many island natives who live here came to mainland to serve the country in uniform. This is not a recent phenomenon. Puerto Ricans have participated in every major United States military engagement from World War I onward. Reports the Department of Defense website, with the soldiers of Puerto Rico 65th Infantry Regiment distinguishing themselves in combat during the Korean War. It also notes that Puerto Ricans, while under Spanish, there are a number of efforts to assist Puerto Rico nationally and locally. Here are just a few. National: United for Puerto Rico, organized by PR First Lady Beatriz Rosello and supported by the private sector. It guarantees 100% of funds go toward victims of the hurricane and the rebuild. Warfighter Disaster Response Team. Made up of veterans, this group directly assists hurricane victims. Visit their website. Also check the websites for Facebook pages, All Hands Volunteers, Americans Catholic Relief Services, Direct Relief, GoFundMe, which has a centralized page for PR relief efforts, Global Giving. They fought alongside the Americans' revolutions. In 1917, 236,000 people from the island registered for the draft for World War I, with nearly 20,000 gone on to serve. The most recent figures from 2010 visit the number of Puerto Rican veterans at 116,029 and 1,225 have died while serving the country, which makes it all the more distressing. The media reports that federal troops who have Hispanic Federation units who have been so critical in the island's slow rebuild are preparing to pull up stakes. The drawboard has already begun, according to the story Thursday by National Public Radio. This comes at a time when many on the island of 3.4 million inhabitants still lack steady access to those most basic of human needs, food and water. Long lines form at designated distribution points on the island, where soldiers hand out cases of water and ready-to-eat meals, reports NPR. A mayor of town in the mountains near the capital of San Juan said the military aid was still needed, as he had 400 older and bedridden residents unable to carry cases of donated water. Captain Angel Morales, a U.S. Army reservist on the island, said, "The distribution sites are the new normal. We have a responsibility as Americans to not let this be normal." Last week, a committee in the United States House of Representatives heard that it may take as much as $21 billion over 2 years to make Puerto Rico whole again. Natalia Joresco, who heads the Financial Oversight and Management Board for the island, said, "Without unprecedented unprecedented levels of help from the United States government, the recovery we are planning for will fail. She said, according to the Voice of America, that amount of money is not small, but for an economy the size of the United States, it will not nearly break the bank. By comparison, we have spent more than $5 trillion on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq since 2001. Some of that expense, by necessity, relates to the nation's building. If we can pay to build up other places, we can pay to build up American. Meanwhile, a tax plan being debated in the U.S. House, one expected to give the most bang to wealthy Americans and corporations, could remove as $1.5 trillion from the budget. The country can do it right by Puerto Rico. It's only a matter of will. We further hope that the tense relationship the Trump administration has with some Puerto Rican officials, particularly San Juan outspoken mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz, has no bearing on the peace or size of the assistance. Millions should not continue to suffer because of a war of words between a handful of politicians. U.S. citizens outside Puerto Rico has a role too. Find organizations and individuals participating in a relief if you are attached, and lend support, financial or in terms of supplies. However much you can give, it's all needed. Puerto Ricans, with their long record of military service, have demonstrated they will be there when their fellow Americans call. We should return the favor.
Okay, let's look at a few items from the sports page. The ACC is enjoying another strong year in football. A year ago, 11 of the Atlantic Coast Conference 15 football teams finished with a winning record. 3 produced 10 or more victories, and 1 won the national championship. Heading into the final 3 weeks of the 2017 season, all but one ACC team, North Carolina, still have a chance to finish the year above 500. Unbeaten Miami and defending national champion Clemson have already clinched winning records, as has Virginia Tech. And the Hurricanes and Tigers remain in the hunt for a national playoff berth. Even down years by the Tar Heels and Florida State have been offset by major improvements of Syracuse and Virginia. The Orange finished 4-8 last year, but have already won 4 games this time around, with games remaining against Wake Forest, Louisville, and Boston College. Cavaliers have made an even bigger improvement, rebounding from a 2-10 finish in 2016 to a bowl-eligible 6-3 currently. I think this league is so competitive that on any given Saturday, anybody can beat anybody, Wake Forest coach Dave Clawson said this week. Clawson's Demon Deacons headed into today's game at Syracuse with a 5-4 mark and need one more victory to become bowl eligible for a second straight year. This is not just a cliche. It has happened this year on the field, Clawson continued. It's the year when we beat Louisville, Boston College, and when we beat Louisville, Boston College has beaten Louisville, and Florida State and Syracuse beat Clemson. The 3 teams that were once almost an untouchable from the other 4 now has a lot of those games have flipped. Yeah, those other teams, they're not getting that memo, said Clemson coach Dabo Swinney, whose program was considered one of those untouchables along with Florida State and Louisville entering the 2017 season. Clemson's 27-24 loss at Syracuse last month was a stunner, and the Tigers had to rally from behind last week to beat NC State. The win against the Wolfpack pushed Clemson back into the top 4 of the college football playoff rankings. This league is incredibly difficult, Swinney said. I have such great respect for the job Steve Adazio is doing at BC, such great respect for Dino Babers and what he's done at Syracuse. Dave Doran has built a great team and program at NC State. This is a really difficult league, an incredibly difficult Atlantic division. But you know what? Isn't that the way we want it? For years, everybody talked about how bad this league was and couldn't win in the postseason, and it couldn't win out of the conference. It's not really a discussion anymore. This league, from top to bottom, is incredibly strong. And if you don't show up, I don't care who you are, you got a chance to get beat. Somewhat similar kind of article comes from Sammy Batten as he talks about the Potential for the year-end ACC awards. Sammy writes, a few weeks back I was asked to be one of the voters choosing the official All-Atlantic Coast Conference football team for 2017. I've cast ballots for all ACC teams in the past, but those were with the Atlantic Coast Sports Media Association, which at one time produced the official all-league picks. But now the ACC has established its own selection process with a panel of voters featuring all 15 head coaches, a radio representative from each school, and 2 media members from each school's market. So, with 3 weeks left in the regular season and ballots scheduled to be cast by November 26, it's time to start considering the candidates for ACC Offensive and Defensive Players of the Year. The first one is a relatively easy choice in my opinion. Although Louisville hasn't been the team many expected this season, junior quarterback Lamar Jackson has continued the kind of play that won him the ACC Player of the Year and the Heisman Trophy a year ago. Jackson is far and away the leader in the major offensive statistical categories among ACC players. He's first in league rushing with 1,029 yards. That's a quarterback. He is tied for first in rushing touchdowns, ranks first in passing yardage, third in touchdown passes, and in passing efficiency, and is first in total offense. If he wins Offensive Player of the Year, Jackson will become the first player to capture the honor twice since it started in 1993. Choosing the Defensive Player of the Year, however, is not as cut and dry. There are a handful of qualified candidates, such as Virginia's senior linebacker Micah Kaiser, who currently leads the ACC in tackles with 97. Kaiser and senior free safety Quinn Blanding have been key performers in the Cavaliers' rebound from last year's 210 finish to being bowl eligible this season. Duke linebacker Joe Giles Harris is another candidate with 86 tackles and 2.5 sacks, as is Wake Forest defensive end Duke Ejiofor. But my pick at this point would be NC State's senior defensive end Bradley Chubb. Among Chubb's 53 total tackles are league-leading totals for tackles for loss and sacks. I think Boston coach college Steve Adazio might agree with my choice, even though he has one of the league's best himself in Pine Forest graduate Harold Landry. He's as good as there is in America without a doubt, Adazio said about Chubb this week. Landry was a strong candidate for Defensive Player of the Year honors when the season began, but an ankle injury has kept him on the sidelines in a win 2 weeks ago against Florida State, and his status for Saturday's game against NC State is still uncertain. Landry has still had a stellar senior year with 38 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, and 5 sacks. So with Jackson and Chubb as the Offensive and Defensive Player of the Year picks, who wins ACC Player of the Year honors? Probably Jackson for a second straight year. If that occurs, it'll be another history-making moment for Jackson. You have to go all the way back to the 92-93 season to find someone who captured ACC Player of the Year honors in consecutive years. That player was Florida State quarterback Charlie Ward. Only 4 of the players in history besides Ward have won the honor in back-to-back seasons. Clemson quarterback Steve Fuller swept the award in 77-78. UNC running back Don McCauley was the pick in 69-70, and NC State quarterback Roman Gabriel was the first to win it twice in 60-61. No defensive player has won ACC Player of the Year since 97, when Florida State defensive end Andre Wadsworth claimed the honor. And one last football-related article, since we're in the heart here of the end of the ACC season. The great laptop caper of 2017 that started with strong post-game remarks by NC State coach Dave Doeren last Saturday ended with a whimper this week. Doeren was visibly irate after Clemson edged his Wolfpack at Carter Finley Stadium by a photo he saw while walking to his post-game press conference that showed a laptop being used on the Tiger sideline. The use of any sort of technology, such as laptops on the sideline by coaches or players, is against NCAA rules. Whether genuinely upset about the laptop or trying to deflect questions about officiating, Doeren was adamant about having the situation investigated by the ACC. The ACC quickly determined the laptop wasn't being used by Clemson's football staff, but by a student who works with the student's social media department. But Doran's comments sparked a response from Clemson coach Dabo Swinney that was first comical, then serious. It was disappointing because that was kind of a challenge to our integrity, Sweeney said. Then you watch the tape. 2 years ago, we go up there and one of the coaches pushes Deshaun Watson. And this year we got some guy take a swipe at Kevon Wallace. I think the investigation needs to be managing his sideline and not worrying about ours. Dorn said at midweek he wasn't sorry how he handled the situation but was moving past it. Look, I'm not a politically correct guy, he said. I coach with a lot of passion. Our kids play with it. He does the same thing, talking about Dabo Sweeney. At the end of the game, when you lose a game that has conference championship implications on it, sometimes things are going to be said. I don't think it's a big deal. I really don't. I'm going to move on, and I'm sure he will. He's got a big game this week.
And now time for the horoscope. If you're a Scorpio, meaning your birthday falls between October 23rd and November 21st, you can bet that no one else is going to see things quite the way you do today. And this is sure to give you a very important advantage. If you're, please excuse if I butchered this name, but Sagittarius, meaning your birthday is November 22nd to December 21st, you can turn up the heat and put on pressure those who haven't been pulling their weight. Now is not the time to compromise. If you're a Capricorn, December 22nd to January 19th, if you're overly aggressive, you risk much that you've been working for, but being too lax will do the same. Moderation is the key. If you're Aquarius, meaning your birthday falls between January 20th and February 18th, if you must repeat yourself today, find new ways of saying the same thing. Try every possible approach if you have to. If you're Pisces, from February 19th to March 20th, it's better to be suggestive than direct today. Implicate rather than explicit. No one wants to hear too much right now. If you're Aries, meaning your birthday falls between March 21st or April 19th, you are feeling the need for a little more contact than usual today. You can fit someone in, even though you have a lot to get done. If you're a Taurus, from April 20th to May 20th, you can meet a major challenge today. Focus on that which gives you. Think twice. Give a friend more attention during evening hours. If you're a Gemini, meaning your birthday is May 21st to June 20th, you will impress a new friend by doing something in the same old routine. You must be more creative and show off your true skills. If you're a Cancer, from June 21st to July 22nd, you face an obstacle today that requires you to think very carefully before taking any action to remove it. There are hidden dangers. If you're a Leo, meaning your birthday falls between July 23rd to August 22nd, others are likely to be more receptive than you expect today. So why not try one of those strange ideas you've been toying with lately? If you're a Virgo, from August 23rd to September 22nd, though you must do all you can to keep someone else safe, looking over his or her shoulder all the time is not likely to help. If you're a Libra, from September 23rd to October 22nd, you can win a little more respect and give a timely boost to your reputation by doing one little thing that no one else is willing to try.
We have just a couple of minutes left. We'll look at a couple brief other things off the business page. The deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history is adding to soaring costs for insurance companies, which are already taking a beating this year from an onslaught of hurricanes, earthquakes, and wildfires. The industry may have to shell out more than $1 billion for the Las Vegas massacre, insurance executives say. Acts of a solo gunman who killed almost 60 people and injured about 500 others when he fired into the crowd of a country music festival last month from his Mandalay Bay hotel room have resulted in multiple lawsuits. Victims have accused the hotel and its owner, MGM Resorts, and concert promoter Live Nation Entertainment of failing to protect people at the event. The shooting would drive up man-made disaster costs for insurance after losses for such incidents worldwide total $7.8 billion, according to data from reinsurer Swiss Re. Brokers and lawyers expect claims related to the Las Vegas incident from life and health insurance and class action lawsuits to continue for years. It doesn't take long to get a large number in claims, said Heidi Lawson, a lawyer at Mintz Levin who specializes in insurance litigation and investigations. There was a failure to oversee, a failure to supervise, a failure to set up internal security measures. And from Alabama, this story, Army veteran Henry Walker was trying to buy a watermelon at Walmart in Alabama when his foot got stuck in a wooden pallet. When he turned, the 59-year-old fell, breaking his hip. Walker sued Walmart over the 2015 incident, and an Alabama jury has now ruled that he should be awarded $7.5 million. You don't expect to go into a grocery store walking fine on your 2 feet and come out on a stretcher, Walker's attorney, Sean O'Hara, told AL.com. Well, we're at the end of our time together today. This has been the reading of the Fayetteville Observer. Your readers this morning have been Jacob and Stuart. We've enjoyed being with you. There will be other programming provided by Radio Reading Service that will follow our reading. And we've enjoyed being with you this morning. God bless each of you, and y'all have a wonderful day. Good job, man.
Thank you.
Good job.
I'll go until that one point I had a cough.
Man, sometimes it gets you. I mean, it sounds like a kind of an easy thing to do, but when when you get to reading a lot like that, especially if you're not used to it, it'll get you a little bit. But anyway, you did fine. You did fine. All right, I think we're done. Back out into the cold.
Do we gotta click anything on here? Or just...
I stay away from the technology.